Gabe, wait up, I shouted, racing after him down the street. He turned, grinning. Catch me if you can, slowpoke. We were always like this, inseparable since before we could walk. Our moms loved to tell the story of how they'd put us in the same playpen as babies, and we'd babble at each other for hours. Remember when Mrs. Johnson caught us stealing apples from her tree? Gabe laughed as we collapsed on his front lawn out of breath. How could I forget? She chased us halfway down the block with that broom. We spent every day together from dawn till dusk, scraped knees, secret hideouts, and endless summer days blurred together. Even when we fought, and boy, did we fight, we'd always make up by sunset. You're my best friend, you know that, I said one night as we lay in the grass, stargazing. Gabe punched my arm playfully. Duh, who else would put up with your ugly mug? I tackled him, and we rolled around laughing. Little did I know then how much those words would mean years later. As we got older, things started to shift. I noticed it one day when we were hanging out in Gabe's treehouse. Hey, check out Melissa, Gabe said, pointing to a girl walking down the street. She's pretty cute, right? I shrugged, not really interested, I guess. But then Gabe smiled at me and my stomach did a weird flip. What about you? Who do you like? I felt my face heat up. I do know. No one, I guess. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Gabe's smile, about how I felt happier when he was around. It scared me a little. The next day at school, I cornered my older sister Leandra. Hey, what does it feel like when you like someone? She raised an eyebrow. Why? Got a crush? No, I said too quickly, just curious. Leandra thought for a moment. Well, you get butterflies in your stomach. You're happier when they're around, sadder when they're not. Thus my heart started racing. That's exactly how I felt about Gabe. Later, I blurted it out to him. I think I have a crush on you. Gabe's eyes widened. Then he grinned. Yeah? Well, Ariana told me she has a crush on me. She kissed my cheek yesterday. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed his cheek too. We both froze, staring at each other. We should probably keep this a secret, Gabe whispered. I nodded, my heart pounding. Things were definitely changing between us. The secret cheek kisses became our thing. We'd sneak them when no one was looking, hearts racing every time. One day, when we were 13, things escalated. We were hiding in my basement playing video games. I bet I can beat your high score, Gabe taunted. No way, I laughed, shoving him playfully. Suddenly we were close, too close. I could see every freckle on his face. Gabe started, then stopped. His eyes flicked to my lips. Before I could chicken out, I leaned in. Our lips met, clumsy and awkward, but it sent electricity through my whole body. When we pulled apart, Gabe's eyes were wide. Wow, he whispered. But the next day at school, everything changed. Some guys were talking about their girlfriends. So who do you like? They asked Gabe. I held my breath, waiting for his answer. Sarah's pretty hot, he said, not meeting my eyes. Her stomach dropped. That afternoon, Gabe asked Sarah out. What about us? I asked him later, hurt and confused. Gabe looked around nervously. Look, we can't. I mean, two guys, people would freak. I felt like I'd been punched. Right? Of course. From then on, Gabe dated girls. I tried to ignore the pain in my chest every time I saw him with someone else. But late at night, when it was just us, sometimes I'd catch him looking at me like he used to. It left me more confused than ever. High school hit us like a freight train. Suddenly, everyone was pairing up, and the pressure was intense. One night, Gabe and I were hanging out in my room. He was flipping through a magazine while I pretended to do homework. So, I said, trying to sound casual, I think I might be gay. Gabe's head snapped up. What? I shrugged, heart pounding. Yeah, I mean, I don't like girls. Not like that. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, are you sure? We're pretty sure, I said. You're the only one who knows. Gabe nodded slowly. Okay, that's okay. But things changed after that. Gabe started dating more girls, almost frantically. Meanwhile, I found the gay community at school. My first boyfriend was a guy named Tyler. When I introduced him to Gabe, the tension was palpable. I don't like him, Gabe said later. Why not? I demanded. Gabe shrugged. Just don't. It became a pattern. Gabe hated every guy I dated, and I bit my tongue every time he canceled our plans for some girl. One night, after a particularly bad breakup, I showed up at Gabe's window. Can I crash here? I asked, trying not to cry. Gabe pulled me inside without a word. We lay on his bed like we used to as kids. I'm sorry, he whispered in the dark. I wasn't sure what he was sorry for, my breakup or something else entirely. But as I drifted off to sleep, I felt his hand slip into mine. In the morning, neither of us mentioned it. But something had shifted again, and I wasn't sure where we stood anymore. Graduation came and went in a blur. Before I knew it, I was packing up my life into boxes. Can't believe you're going all the way to California, Gabe said, helping me load my car. Yeah, well, gotta spread my wings, right? I tried to sound excited, but my stomach was in knots. The night before I left, Gabe showed up at my door. Let's go for a drive, he said. We ended up at our old spot by the lake. The air was thick with unspoken words. I'm gonna miss you, Gabe finally said, his voice rough. I turned to look at him. I'll miss you too. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me, but he just pulled me into a tight hug. College was a whirlwind. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people like me, free to be myself. I dated a guy named Eric, then Jason, then Mike. But late at night, I'd find myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over Gabe's name. We tried to keep in touch. Awkward phone calls turned into sporadic texts. Met any cute guys, he'd ask. A few. You still with that girl? What's her name? Nah, we broke up. It was strange, hearing about his life in snippets, like looking at a familiar painting through a keyhole. One night, drunk at a party, I called him. I miss you, I slurred into the phone. There was a long pause. I miss you too, he finally said, his voice soft. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a text from Gabe. We should talk when you're home for break. My heart raced as I typed back. I spent the next few weeks wondering what he wanted to say, and if I was ready to hear it. The drive home for break felt endless. My mind raced with possibilities of what Gabe wanted to talk about. We met at our old spot by the lake. Gabe looked different, older, more serious. So, I said, trying to sound casual, what's up? Gabe took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking. My heart pounded. Yeah? After you left, I couldn't stop thinking about us. About everything. I held my breath, afraid to hope. I'm by, he blurted out. I've known for a while, but I was scared to admit it. Gabe, I started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. My dad, he caught me looking at gay porn once. He beat the shit out of me, told me no son of his would be a fae. He choked on the word, you know? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed and scared. I thought if I ignored it, dated girls, it would go away. He looked at me, eyes shining. But it didn't. I couldn't stop thinking about you. And my heart was racing. What are you saying? I'm saying, after you, I couldn't love anyone else. Not really. He took my hand. I love you. I always have. I felt like I was dreaming. Gabe, he kissed me then, and it was like coming home. When we broke apart, we were both crying and laughing. What do we do now? I asked dazed. Gabe smiled, a real, genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. We figure it out together. As we walked back to the car, hand in hand, I felt like my heart might burst. After all these years, we were finally on the same page. But I knew we had a lot to work through. Years of unspoken feelings and missed opportunities. This was just the beginning. The euphoria of our reunion lasted until reality. Like we still lived in different cities. We'll make it work, Gabe said, squeezing my hand as he dropped me off at the airport. I nodded, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Yeah, of course we will. And we tried. God, did we try? Late night phone calls, constant texting, weekend visits whenever we could manage. I got that promotion, I told him one night over Skype. Gabe's face lit up. That's amazing. We should celebrate. Yeah, next time I see you, I said, forcing a smile. The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. Our visits became our lifeline. We'd spend every moment together, trying to cram a month's worth of intimacy into a weekend. I hate saying goodbye, I mumbled into his chest our last morning together. Gabe held me tighter. Then let's just say see you soon. But as the months wore on, the distance began to take its toll. Small arguments turned into bigger ones. You canceled again? Gabe's voice was tight with frustration. I'm sorry, this deadline is killing me. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Another silence. Another compromise. We were both stressed, overworked, and missing each other desperately. Something had to give. One night, after a particularly rough week, Gabe called me. I can't do this anymore, he said, and my heart stopped. What do you mean? I asked, panic rising in my throat. This distance, it's killing me. I need you here with me. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. So what are you saying? I'm saying, maybe it's time for a change, for one of us to make a move. As I listened to Gabe lay out his plans, I felt a mix of excitement and terror. This was at the moment where we decided if what we had was worth fighting for. And as scary as it was, I knew my answer. We'd wasted too many years apart already. The day Gabe moved in was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture to assemble, and the constant dance of two people trying to occupy the same space. Where should I put this? Gabe asked, holding up a hideous lamp. I grimaced. Maybe in the closet? Forever? He laughed, setting it on a side table. It was my grandma's, it stays. As we unpacked, our stuff mingled together. His books next to mine, our clothes sharing closet space. It felt surreal. As that night, exhausted, we collapsed onto our bed. Our bed. We did it, Gabe murmured, pulling me close. Yeah, we did, I replied, still not quite believing it. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. Gabe's tendency to leave his shoes everywhere drove me nuts. For the millionth time, shoes off in the house. I called out one day. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all. Meanwhile, my neat freak tendencies grated on him. Babe, the dishes can wait till morning, he'd say, trying to coax me back to bed. But we were learning, compromising, and the good far outweighed the bad. I loved waking up next to him every morning, stealing kisses as we got ready for work, coming home to him at night, sharing our days over dinner. This one evening, as we cuddled on the couch watching TV, Gabe turned to me. I was terrified to move in together, he admitted. Really? Why? I asked, surprised. He shrugged, afraid we'd drive each other crazy, that the fantasy was better than reality. I held my breath, waiting. Gabe smiled, kissing me softly. But this, us? It's better than any fantasy. As I kissed him back, I couldn't help but agree. We'd faced distance, fear, and societal pressure. But here we were, building a life together. It wasn't always easy, but it was ours. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Time flew by as Gabe and I settled into our life together. Before we knew it, we'd been dating for almost 3 years. Thus, on my birthday, Gabe insisted on staying in. Let's just have a quiet night, yeah? I agreed, relieved to avoid any fuss. He bought a small cake, and as I went to cut it, the knife hit something hard. What the? I muttered, cutting around the obstruction. My heart nearly stopped when I saw what was inside, a note wrapped in plastic. If I could have married you the first night we made love, I would have. But I was stupid enough to let you go. I can't entertain the idea of you not being mine anymore. Will you marry me? I looked up, tears in my eyes, to find Gabe on one knee. So? He asked, voice shaking. What do you say? I pulled him up, kissing him hard. Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. We spent the night making love, whispering promises between kisses. The next morning, reality set in. How are we going to tell our families? I asked, suddenly nervous. Gabe squeezed my hand. Together, we'll face it together. To our surprise, our families were more accepting than we'd expected. There were tears, hugs, and apologies for past behavior. We were raised differently, my mom said. But we can't deny how much you love each other. Planning the wedding was a whirlwind. My sister Leandra took charge, determined to make it the event of the year. Listen, you have to choose. Lilies or roses, she demanded one day. I looked at Gabe helplessly. He laughed. Babe, I'd marry you on top of a mountain or in the middle of the ocean, whatever makes you happy. On our wedding day, standing at the altar, I couldn't take my eyes off Gabe. We'd come so far from those two kids stealing kisses in secret. I do, I said, voice thick with emotion. I do, Gabe echoed, squeezing my hands. As we kissed, sealing our vows, I felt like my heart might burst. We'd faced so much to get here, but it was worth every moment. This was just the beginning of our forever. Married life suited us well. We fell into a comfortable rhythm, but there was still something missing. One night, cuddled on the couch, Gabe broached the subject. Have you ever thought about kids? My heart skipped a beat. Yeah, I have. You? He nodded, looking nervous, I think. I think I'd like to be a dad. With you. I kissed him softly. Let's do it. The adoption process was grueling, endless paperwork, home visits, and anxious waiting. But finally we got the call. There's a baby boy, the social worker said. Would you like to meet him? So the moment they placed Gerard in my arms, I was in love. Gabe's eyes were wet as he stroked our son's cheek. He's perfect, he whispered. Parenthood was a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and more love than I thought possible. Gerard grew into a mischievous toddler, keeping us on our toes. 2 years later, we adopted Annabelle. Our family felt complete. Daddy, Papa, look, Gerard shouted one day, proudly showing off a crayon drawing of our family. Annabelle toddled over, babbling happily. Gabe scooped her up, grinning. Ever thought we'd have this, did you? He asked, looking at me over the kids' heads. I shook my head, overwhelmed with emotion. It's better than I ever dreamed. Our life wasn't perfect. We still had fights, stress from work, and the usual parenting struggles. But we faced it all together. One night, after finally getting the kids to bed, Gabe and I collapsed onto the couch. Remember when we were kids? I asked, feeling nostalgic. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Gabe pulled me close, honestly. I hoped we would. Even back then, I knew you were it for me. As I leaned in to kiss him, I marveled at our journey. From childhood friends to secret crushes, through years of separation and fear, to this moment, married with 2 beautiful children asleep upstairs. It had taken nearly our whole lives to get here, but as Gabe's lips met mine, I knew one thing for certain. Every moment, every struggle had been worth it. This was our happily ever after, and we'd fought hard to earn it.